Welcome to this week's episode of Sharpen Your Axe. Today we're going to talk about creating culture, a way to really build a winning culture that serves other people well. Enjoy. Mike, do you remember years ago, this was 7-8 years ago I think, we were sitting in a conference room and we were doing a leadership development training. It was really when we just started our monthly leadership development activities, and we were going through a book with a good friend, Cecil Kemp,
Cecil, yeah.
who's been around Churchill from the very start.
Yeah.
And the book we were going through was called The 7 Laws of Highest Prosperity. And I can remember you sitting in the back of that room during one of those sessions, and you had an epiphany about your role as a pastor, which you're not.
Right.
Tell about that.
Well, I grew up in a pastor's home. Obviously, the thought went through my mind more than once, although my mom and dad never put this pressure on me, will I follow in Dad's footsteps? Countless times through the years, different parishioners, folks that went to our church, as a little boy all the way up through my teenage years, they would say things like, I bet you'll follow in your dad's footsteps. I bet you'll be our next pastor someday when your dad retires. And so, for whatever reason, the home I was reared in was a home full of love and whatnot, so I was open to that. Not only was I open for that, but the first of my 2 undergraduate degrees was at a church-related school where I graduated with a double major in music and theology, so I prepared myself for it. But when I graduated and came back home, I didn't feel what we refer to as a calling. I didn't feel that inside me. And so I remember saying that to my dad. I said, Dad, I'm not sure that I have a calling to be a pastor, to follow in your footsteps. And I remember my dad kind of laughingly, he said, well, son, that's okay. Your mom and I are certainly okay with that. But if you don't have a calling, then you better go back to college and get a real degree. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I went back and got a second undergraduate degree in business. Started into my business career, and fast forward to 7 or 8 years ago to that particular day, and I remember it so well. I was sitting in the back of the room. It was the 4th and final day of a book review. We were doing a book review every Wednesday morning for an hour and a half with the author of the book leading the review. I'm sitting in the back of the room, and several of our employees were participating. Cecil had a good ability to get folks to chime in and participate. And I remember 2 employees in particular. They'd been with us for quite a while. We didn't ask them when they came to work for us, do you go to church? We don't use that as a litmus test. We are a faith-based company. We don't hide that. But we didn't make that as a litmus test. And I had observed both of those employees for the years that they had been with us at that point. I'd observed what I would call their spiritual growth. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea if they went to church, how often they went to church, or did they pray, did they read the Bible? I don't know. I didn't ask it. They were here to work, right? Mm-hmm. But I had observed what I would label spiritual growth in them by the way they were responding to the book review questions. And as I'm sitting there listening to their responses, I started tearing up a little bit. Didn't cry out loud, nobody knew it. But I began to realize it was almost as though, and you know me, I'm not a guy that believes God speaks to me out loud. I don't know that I've ever had God say anything to me that I was aware of, but I've certainly felt led to do certain things. And that particular morning, as I was listening to their responses, I felt as though the Lord were almost saying to me, all those years when you wondered if you were supposed to become a pastor, if you wondered if you were going to follow in your dad's footsteps, and you wondered if maybe you missed your calling. He said, you didn't miss your calling. You did kind of follow in your dad's footsteps in a way. And the name of your church is Churchill Mortgage. And your parishioners are your employees. And you've created a culture with the help of a lot of good people that has caused people to be open to maybe studying the Bible a little bit more, reading the Word of God, and applying biblical principles in their own individual lives as well as the corporate life here of Churchill. And so I just remember that morning, that feeling, and I felt good that we've got a culture here. We're not ashamed that we are a faith-based company. We don't try to push it on people, but we're not at all ashamed about it. And that morning I felt very good.
You know, the takeaway that I get from that really are two or three things. One, we're all in a position of leadership.
Yeah.
The leadership is simply influence, and how you carry yourself amongst others directly impacts the level of influence you can have on them.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my second takeaway, is one of the things that you do so well is you act every day in a consistent manner that puts people before profits, that honors relationship, and that does the right thing. Not that all of those things you perfectly execute every day, but the trend line of your
I
life.
wish I did
and
perfectly
we all
execute
do.
them, but we don't.
But people observe that.
Yeah.
And as people observe that, they're now open to being influenced. And your influence has been significant. I think that's how you create culture, and how you've kind of created the ability to pastor this flock.
Well,
Churchill.
if I can play off that just a moment, you used a phrase a while ago that my dad gave me, you know that, taught it to me years ago, when he said, son, always put people over property. He used the word property. Always put people over things. Treat people well, treat them right. And we kind of used that and reworded it a little bit. We say around here, put people over profits. We don't mean by that we put people to the exclusion of profits. If we excluded profits always, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have the great company that we've got. But we do believe strongly that we need to treat all people well. And so the little circular thought that we've got here, I don't remember where we got it, but we sure believe it and we try to practice it often, all the ways, is when we treat our employees well, then they should therefore treat our customers well. And when they treat our customers well, then our customers will treat us well. So it all starts with, how do we view other people? You said it earlier, Matt. We view the people we work for as individuals, not as files. We're working for the Johnson family or the Clarke family or the Smith family. We're not working on the Clarke file. And so it kind of comes back to what we were talking earlier. What's your worldview on life? And our culture, our view here is we're working for families. And the people that work here are meaningful people that mean a lot to us. We want to treat people well, and when we do that, we tend to be treated well. You do reap
What you sow.
what you sow.